consumer story that came in by way of automobile data on sales of brands that you love coming out yesterday. And the data suggests that after a 4-decade hegemony, it is not Maruti Suzuki or any vehicle of Maruti Suzuki which topped the ranks, but it was another brand and another vehicle. Well, let's look at the data first. Retail sales overall saw a 9% year-on-year growth in 2024, and this was boosted by strong demand for two-wheelers as well as passenger vehicles, and this according to FADA. Total vehicle registrations reached 2.61 crore units, up from 2.39 crore rupees 2.39 crore vehicles in 2023. Passenger vehicles, meanwhile, rose by about 5% to 40.7 lakh units. And this was spurred by network expansion and new launches through margin pressures and a discount war emerging in the later half due to high inventory. Now, look at the graph on your screens right now. The cars that sold well in 2023 no longer making the cut in 2024. In 2023, the top-selling vehicle was the Maruti Suzuki Swift, which is no longer in the top 5 list in 2024. And 2024 sees a non-Maruti Suzuki vehicle right at the top, which is Tata Punch, selling 2,02,029 units. Next up was Maruti's WagonR with 1,91,000 odd units, followed by the Maruti Ertiga with a similar count. Closely behind Maruti Brezza, and then there was the Hyundai Creta. Let's understand this trend with a very special guest joining us this morning, CS Vigneshwar, President FADA, joining us on Morning Brief at 9. Mr. Vigneshwar, a very, very different trend emerging in 2024. It is not a Maruti Suzuki car on top, but it is indeed Tata Punch, which was not even in the top 5 last year.
I guess with a very competitive market, these things are bound to happen because it's, I think, number one, as a position in a competitive market is never to be taken for granted. There are excellent products which are coming out of many OEMs. And the competition is high, and it's good that there's a change because I'm sure Maruti and Tata, they are wonderful car manufacturers. They would do the best to, again, either one would try to hang on to the first position, the other one would try to beat them to it.
But according to you, Mr. Vigneshwar, what changed between 2023 and 2024? We had the Maruti Swift as the highest selling vehicle in 2023, and it's not even in the top 5 in 2024. Is this the urge of every Indian to want to own an SUV? And if an SUV is not something they can afford, then at least something that looks like an SUV. Is SUV the flavor of 2024?
SUVization, if I can call it that way, has been happening not only in India but throughout the world. More and more SUVs seem to be replacing hatchbacks and sedans, and it's very pertinent as a factor which is also in the Indian scheme of things. Couple of things. Number one, the SUV seems to give a better road presence from the outside. So there's a lot of, the ego satisfaction also is very high. From the inside, your visibility, road visibility is high. Also, there's an advantage regarding, the ground clearance. Certain Indian cities in certain parts of India, which is very important. The road clearance is very important. And also, there's a perceived sense of safety. I can assure you that with NCAP ratings and all that, even sedans and hatchbacks are equally safe.
Right.
But there's also a deep sense of safety when there's a larger vehicle in your doorstep.
All right. I want to bring your notice now to one more interesting statistic, and this is coming with the number of electric vehicles sold in the year 2024. And that has seen a jump of about 20% or so. So is it right to say that we are now pretty much at the tipping point where more and more electric vehicles are going to be mainstreamed on Indian roads? Or do you think, Mr. Vigneshwar, we are still a far distance away from achieving that milestone of 30% of India's fleet to be electric by 2030?
Kartik, this 30% by 2030 is going to be a hard sell. It's not that it is not achievable, but you're right, it has gone up by 20%, but 20% hike would be very small and minuscule in terms of the market share. So in 2023, the EV market share for passenger vehicles was 2.5%, and this the past year in 2024, it has gone to 3%. So it's not a huge increase, but you would actually see an accelerated pace because of In 2023, you probably had a couple of vehicles or two or three vehicles. Last year, we had a handful. But this year, we're going to have literally a lot of vehicles being introduced by every manufacturer. Every manufacturer who's serious about India, who has a large presence in India, or who have great plans for India, is going to get into the electric bandwagon. But EV is just one part of the story. We also need to consider other alternative fuels like CNG, hybrids. So all these things would work together to reduce India's fuel needs, and it would really help in reducing the import of fossil fuels.
All right. Well, I understand that, it might be a difficult question for you to answer, with great degree of accuracy at this moment. But I still want to ask you that Maruti Suzuki has also now finally announced its very hard foray into the electric market with the launch of the e-Vitara. Now, if you look at the graphics that we were just playing a few minutes back, you have a large gap between the number 2 and the number 3 players. So you have Tata Motors right at the top, and then you have Mahindra and Mahindra. But then the gap between the number 2 and the number 3 is fairly large. So do you think with Maruti Suzuki now announcing its decision to come full on into the EV space, we will now see this rise in EVs, not just as a percentage, but also as a volume growth in 2025?
It will happen because from what I read, there are more than 20 models which are going to be introduced at the auto show. And the auto show usually is a very interesting time for the auto industry because it really shows the mood of the OEMs to take the risk of introducing products. And also it shows the mood of the customers to be willing to go and buy a different product. And here in this case, EVs, although they're quite nascent in India, they have a great future because the government, the OEMs, and everyone are actually driving forward to have less fossil fuels, therefore reducing our foreign exchange depletion and also to make sure that the environment is a lot more clearer. So yes, it's going to be a good race. I don't know whether we're going to hit 30% by 2030. I hope we do. But I think the EVs are going to play a much larger game in the Indian system, automotive system. And yes, Maruti being Maruti, they have the network presence everywhere. So I think it would be a good product to wait for them, to wait for the product, the e-Vitara. And I mean, wishing them the best. And hopefully a lot of manufacturers come on to the EV bandwagon.